Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's Six Nations preview. And the perfect timing really at the end of the Currie Cup last weekend for South African fans. Roll on one more week and we have got the return of an international test window as the Six Nations kicks off tomorrow with Italy and France getting things underway, followed by England versus Scotland, and Ireland and Wales will round the weekend off on Sunday. So it's another a jam-packed weekend of international rugby, as is always the case when it comes to the Six Nations. And it's going to be quite an interesting one because if you remember last year, in what was officially the longest Six Nations ever, in that it started on the 1st of February and it ended on the 31st of October as a result of having to take a break due to COVID-19. The longest Six Nations ever was actually won by England, although they did tie with France with points. They were both on 18 points at the end of the tournament, and England's points difference of a plus 44 points difference was superior. Interesting enough, also there was a tie for third place with Ireland and Scotland both finishing on 14 points, Wales on 8, and Italy not getting a single point during last year's championship. And unfortunately, it's probably quite likely that a similar fate might actually face the Italians in this tournament. Before we get into the lineups for this weekend and what to expect across the competition, please do subscribe to the channel, bottom right hand corner there. Smash a like on the video as well. Let me know who you are backing. Let me know if you've got any predictions for the weekend. We will be live for England versus Scotland tomorrow in the Kolkata Cup, as well as Wales versus Ireland on Sunday. So make sure you come and hang out, chat rugby, and just have a good time on the stream. Right, so in terms of the games this weekend, what to expect. There's a little bit of continuity across all the sides. We've got no new captains or anything really, no new coach or anything like that. It's a much more settled sides really. And I think, bar Italy, the other sides are all going to be quite competitive. I think Scotland have been getting steadily better, and the return of Finn Russ is going to be a huge boost for them. But I also think that you've got an English side, which on paper is probably the best side. You've got a very young and very exciting French side, which I think is probably everyone's favourite because of the style of rugby they play. The French are always a very passionate side, leave nothing on the nothing left in the tank in every game they play. But also, you see an Irish side, which we know what Ireland can do if they really do pitch up. And then Wales they've got some very good players themselves. So I think it's quite a nice balanced tournament. I think it's, whilst England are probably the favourites, if you look back at last year's competition, the key players were all French players, and you think of Rowan Tamac, who was the leading point scorer with 57 points, Charles Olivon, the French captain, who scored the most tries last season with 4, as well as the player of the tournament, who was Antoine Dupont, who is the best scrum half in the world right now. A fantastic player, just 24 years old. So, he's going to be leading that French side from the base of the scrum for a long time coming, and a fantastic player to watch. But in terms of the first game, it is Italy versus France. And you'll look, if you don't recognize that Italian starting lineup, you could be forgiven, because there are 134 caps across that starting 15, which means that there are less than 10 caps per player. A lot more experience on the bench, the likes of Carlo Canna there, who's got I think about 47 caps to his name, as well as Palazzani's also got quite a few caps. So it's quite an experienced bench. But Franco Smith, the former Cheetahs coach, going with a very inexperienced Italian side, and he says that they are capable of short-term success, but I think he is probably looking more sort of long-term and starting thinking, let me start trying to build a side which can compete in a few years' time. Let's try building towards the next World Cup. Let's try and build a very good Italian side, rather than just sort of trying to remain competitive all the time, not really growing. I think he's going to back a nice young side and say, I want to take them to this sort of level. For France, is a very strong side. There is no Miranda Internet as a result of injury, which means that Mathieu Jalabert will be the fly half, but all eyes will be on Antoine Dupont, who for me is just such a great player to watch. The leading scrum half in the world, and he really does set the benchmark for what it is to be a scrum half in world rugby at the moment. South African fans, you'll recognise the lock pair in there, Bernard Leroux, as well as Paul Willemse. Paul Willemse obviously used to play for the Bulls. It's just you look at those teams and you've got to think that France will probably put the sword to Italy, and I think I reckon we're going to see quite a spirited performance from Italy, as we usually do. However, I do just think that they've got, France will have too much for Italy to really compete. And then you look at the Kolkata Cup, you've got England versus Scotland. If you look at England there, both sides have got very inexperienced inside centres, so that should be a particularly interesting battle with Cameron Redpath on debut, and Ollie Lawrence, I think just about the 2 caps to his name. There is a potential debutant for England in Benno Obama, the prop. But apart from that, quite a lot of the usual suspects. There is no Sam Underhill, but there is Tom Curry, Billy Vunipola, Owen Farrell, captain the side as usual. A bit of controversy about whether Elliot Daly should be starting. You've got George Ford on the bench. Mario Toja, obviously, at the lock there, is going to be a player to watch across the tournament. And then you look at Scotland, and South African fans will recognise quite a few names, the likes of Duane van der Merwe, VPN Nel on the bench, Ollie Cable, as well as Jacob van der Walt, the former Lions fly half, who made just 1 appearance so far for Scotland. He's been very impressive for Edinburgh and one of the best performing fly halves in Europe at the moment. He will come off the bench. But apart from that, I think Finn Russell being back is a huge win for Scotland. Stuart Hogg as well, bring a lot of experience. But I think you look at something like Van der Merwe as well. He's been scoring a lot of tries, and they'll hopefully get them to try and get him over the line as many times as possible across the tournament. But I think this should be quite a good game. You've got to back the English backline especially, and such a powerful pack. You know, the likes of Jamie George, Tom Curry, Vunipola, Mario Toja really will try and get them on the front foot. But if Scotland can try and hit them up front, I think it's a backline with quite a lot of pace and quite a lot of skill, which can probably try and compete. And then interesting to see how the benches do work. But again, you've probably got to back England. You know, there's just too much quality across the field. But I mean, there's so much more at stake than in an All Six Nations with the Lions Tour. Hopefully happening this year. We're not quite sure. Actually, I prefer it to happen next year and then postpone it. But we do have a Lions Tour that is in the upcoming months. So a lot of these players are playing for positions in the Lions Tour. So there's so much at stake for the likes of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Speaking of Ireland and Wales, the final match of the weekend will see Wales take on Ireland. Wales are at home. They'll obviously be led by Alan Wynne-Jones. Lee Halfpenny is the big name to watch for Wales, as well as Justin Tupurik. I think he's also a fantastic player. Dan Biggar, a very good kicker for goal. So if the Wales can try and get themselves into good positions and force some penalties, you know, you do know that you've got a very reliable kicker in the likes of Dan Biggar, as you do with Jonathan Sexton, who will captain Ireland. CJ Stander there at 8th man. It's just, you've got to love the way that sort of Ireland always sort of go about these things. You know, it's a very they can be very physical side. Something like Cian Healy's, I think he's playing his 50th Six Nations appearance, shows you the amount of experience there. Conor Murray is also very experienced at number 9 there. And I think that, you know, you're going to have to back Ireland in this one. And I think Wales Wales defensively are always just such a difficult side to break down. You know, they're physical. They kind of draw a line in the sand and they say that you will not pass. They're a really big hitting pack, and they really do make you work for your points. But, you know, they often don't score a lot of points themselves, which sometimes can be the issue. But, you know, if you look at the Springboks 2 years ago in their playoff stages, it's a very tough team to try and break down. And Ireland are going to have to be very, very patient when it comes to just trying to break down that Welsh defence and just backing themselves. That if they can go the full 80 and put in a solid performance, get themselves into positions, take the points, that they can hopefully try and grind down the Welsh defence. And that will probably be their plan of attack this weekend. So those are 3 matchups, 3 very interesting games. Lots of very interesting players on display. As I said, for me, the biggest thing for me was still looking at how the British and Irish Lions are going to shape up before they come and tour against the world champions. So that's a nice sort of subplot across what is always a very entertaining competition to watch. Let me know who you are backing in the comments below. I'm going to go with the France, England, and Ireland win. So I'm not going to go across any too many upsets. I think that the England game might be a bit closer than we think, and I'm really hoping that Wales do put up a bit of fight. I don't have too much hope for Italy. I just think it's too young, it's too inexperienced for a very exciting and dominant French team. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Hopefully I'll see you guys out on the live watch along. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video as well. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you very soon.